Shalom, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Coffee and Connection. I definitely have my coffee next to me today, no matter what time it is. So it's one of those days. Baruch Hashem. It's great to be here with all of you, and I'm excited to talk about a new topic. The last three weeks, even we've really been talking about empathy and authenticity, which was the main topic of the challenge and the authentically feminine program. And what I wanted to talk about today is a topic that it keeps coming up. It's a topic that I hear a lot from my clients. It's a topic that I hear in women that I speak to. It's a topic that I feel in my own life, right? There's so much that we have to decide on a regular basis. We have to make decisions. We have to make choices. And it's not an easy thing to do for so many different reasons, right? There's so many reasons why making decisions can be a struggle. One of them, I'll just list a few of the ones that I can think of, but if you have any more that you'd like to share, any reasons that you find that making decisions is hard for you, just go ahead and put it in the chat and we can address them. One of the reasons, and I think this is the one that right now can really make making decisions a challenge, is that there's so much information out there. And not just information, but so much conflicting information that it can be so hard to know what's the right thing to do. What is the best decision? And so that's one reason that it's so hard to make decisions, because we always have so many different ideas. We're so blasted with information from everywhere we go, right? Anywhere we turn, there's information coming at us, right? We live in the information age. So there's a lot of information. We know a lot. We also have to really trust ourselves to make decisions. And the issue with trusting ourselves, and add to that the fact that we know so much, is that we also, and I think this is a third issue, but they're all connected, is that we expect so much of ourselves. And the fact that we expect so much of ourselves and the fact that we have to trust ourselves to make decisions can very easily feel like a contradiction. Because if I have to make a decision and I have to trust myself to make a decision, but I also expect that the decision I make will be the best decision, then it becomes much more difficult for me to feel safe making that decision, right? If I know that if I make the wrong decision, not only will I've made the wrong decision, but I'm going to beat myself up about it, right? And how often do we do that? Oh, I shouldn't have done that. What was I thinking? How could I have done that? And the truth is that when we say those things, we are not only making it hard for ourselves to trust ourselves to make choices, but we also don't know that if we had done the opposite, the other choice, it would have been better. We don't know, right? That's the crazy thing about making decisions. That's what actually makes it very vulnerable, is that not only do we not know if we made the right, like if we made the right decision, we don't know how other options will have turned out in the end of the day, right? It's kind of like, did you ever read your own choose your own adventure when you were a kid? I used to do choose your own adventure when I was a kid. I'd go to the library, I'd take them out, and I always first I'd read the book straight through, like with my real answer, and then I'd go check all the other options. I ended up reading the whole book. And what I found interesting was that often two choices or three choices, different choices down the line would still lead you to the same place, right? And especially if we believe in hashgacha pratit, then we don't know if where we ended up was because we made even if it's not where we want it to be? Is it because I made a bad decision? Maybe if I had made another decision, it would have been worse. Maybe this is where I was meant to be. All we can do is make the best choices with what is in front of us, the information in front of us, and to trust ourselves to make that choice, to trust ourselves that we are, you know, looking at what's in front of us, looking at the options, and doing the best we can. And that will also necessitate not beating ourselves up or expecting ourselves to make perfect choices. I always say, and you may have heard me say this before, there's no such thing as a perfect choice. If it was a perfect choice, it wouldn't be a choice, right? Of course, you would be doing that, right? You wouldn't even be considering something else. It wouldn't be like a havamina. It wouldn't even be a thought in your mind to do something else if it was so clear. The only reason that it's an issue at all is because each of the choices have good reasons, have a good possibilities that could come from them. And in the end of the day, it's a decision of risk management. Okay, what do I mean by that? I learned this from my father. This is what my father taught me. Anytime you make a decision, it's a risk management. You look at the different options and you ask yourself, which of recognizing that both options, like I say, there's no perfect option. He says, every option has a risk. Everything that you do has a risk involved. The question is, which risk are you more willing to take? Which risk are you more willing to deal with the consequences? Right? And that's just kind of like the other side of the coin of the way I usually talk about it. But it's so important. Once we can recognize that, it makes our decision making process so much easier because we're not expecting a perfect answer. And perfectionism has its way of showing its ugly head in so many different ways in our lives. And this is one of the ways it can. That feeling of I have to make the perfect answer, the perfect choice. Another thing that I find comes up is that when we're making choices, we kind of convince ourselves that whatever choice we make is like the forever choice, right? I was just telling a client today, whatever decision you make, it doesn't have to be your forever choice. It's your right now choice, right? So if you're thinking about where to move or what school to send your kids to or what job to do or what to make for dinner, whatever it is. Sometimes we get this thought in our head like, once I make this choice, I can't change it. I can't, what if I've made a mistake? I'll be stuck in it. And the truth is that we are all constantly on a path that we are correcting as we go along. We make a choice, either it works out and we keep going, or it doesn't quite work out and we have to shift a little bit, right? And if it doesn't work for us at all, we can do what we need to do to change path. Sometimes all we need to do is shift that path a little bit. And we're constantly learning and growing and making new decisions. Now, someone's asking a very good question here. What about marriage? Marriage is close to a forever choice. And I would say like this about marriage. First of all, there are options to end a marriage and start again. That is a possibility. And even if we don't want to go that route because it's not always the best choice, often you're just end up in the same situation somewhat again, or you still have, it's not always so easy. It's not just starting over again. But the truth is, even in a marriage, when you chose a man, you chose your husband, who you are when you marry him and who he is when you marry him doesn't really stay the exact same person. We grow, we move, we change. So if something isn't working, that's a great example of how we can figure out how to self-correct, self-correct ourselves, self-correct the relationship, correct the culture, correct the way that we're communicating with each other. There's something that can shift, right? It doesn't have to just, we don't have to stay on that same exact path because, oh, I put myself here. So now I'm in, what's it called? Auto drive, right? Where you can drive without your feet on the pedal. And that she's saying, but it's so hard. It's true. It is so hard. And the truth is that that is life's journey. Life's journey is seeing what's working, what's not working, and what decisions can we make to shift that. Whether it's something that we do for ourselves, whether it's looking at the situation around us and saying, what do I need to change? What can I change? Right? And we always have a choice. There's always a choice. Knowing you have a choice can then open up that realm of possibilities. So, what choice do I want to make? And one of the things that's so interesting in choices is that we often think of our choices as I have choice A and I have choice B, right? And this is where we get stuck because maybe we don't like choice A and we don't like choice B. So maybe right now it feels like my marriage is either choice A, stay in this stuck place that I don't like, or choice B is end the relationship. But then I'm on a whole nother path. But how do I know that path's not going to lead to the same place or that's going to come with its own issues? So both of those don't sound very good. So then what we can do so beautifully is what Stephen Covey calls the third alternative, right? Where you can look for, and I think of it like this. I think of like, we have two choices and they feel like they're against each other and they're here. I always think like slide them apart. Slide them apart like they're on an axis, right? Slide them apart like a, remember those like fraction lines we had to do as kids? Like, find 3/8. So you had to put like, you had it like 1 and 2, and then you had to put like 7 lines. So it was eights, remember? And then you put 3/8. So like slide them apart and look for the lines and the choices in between the two. And as you can't find one, just keep sliding it apart till you can find your third option. Whenever someone comes to me and says, I feel like I'm stuck, I either do this or I do that, I always invite them to look for that third option. What else is possible? And it's amazing what happens when you look at your issues from that perspective. It's amazing what happens when you take any challenge and you bring that into the equation. It mamish opens up the realm of possibilities, and you can start to look for something that actually feels good for you, that gets you excited, right? That's what Stephen Covey says. That's how you know you're on to a good third alternative. When something, he's like, there's excitement in the room. And that goes for between you and someone else, right? If you and your husband are stuck and you can't figure out, what are we going to do? Should we do this? Should we do that? And I want this, you want that. We can't make the same choice, right? What about making choices together? We want different things. There are certain things in life that we're always going to want different things because we have different views or different what's the word I'm looking for here? Different values, different hashkafas. And yet when you talk about it, when you express what you want, when you know what you're looking for and you talk about it and you understand each other, suddenly you can start to find those other options, a third option, a fourth option, a fifth option, and you start to get excited as you find things that can work for you. So this is something that works in relationships, having to make decisions together, and it even works for our own choices that we have to make. So if you need to make a choice and the two options that seem out there don't sound like things you want to do, you're not willing to take those risks, they don't speak to you, it doesn't make you feel good, then you look for that third alternative. You look for what choice can I make that I can feel confident in, that I can feel knowing that it's not going to be perfect. It might not be perfect. Life isn't perfect. No choice is perfect. Often the situation isn't perfect, right? But what can we do? What is possible? And when you do that, you bring a sense of empowerment to the decision. You bring a sense of, you know, your own trust, trusting yourself. And the more we trust ourselves to make choices, the easier it becomes to make a choice. Because, and this is actually Stephen Covey's son, Stephen Covey Jr., I think his name is, he talks about trust and he says that trust is the most inspirational. Like it's way you inspire people most is by trusting them, right? When someone feels trusted, they want to help, they want to do things, they want to put in their best. And that doesn't just work with other people. Ladies, that works with us as well. When we trust ourselves, when we have confidence in ourselves, I know I'm doing my best. I know I'm a good wife. I know I'm a good mother. I know I'm good at what I do. I know I'm doing my best, and my best is awesome. And I'm going to make the best decision that I can, even though it's not going to be perfect. And there will be things about this decision that I most likely won't like. When we trust ourselves, we give ourselves that inner strength to make choices and to make them confidently. It's an upward spiral that just keeps going. And that's where we get to have inner confidence. And one thing that's so important to remember about all of this, why all of this is so important, why it's important to feel confident, why it's important to be able to look for that third alternative, why it's important to understand that whatever choice you make is going to be the best choice you can, is because the alternative to not making a choice is doing nothing. And that's also a choice. We can't, when we have a choice to make, we can't get out of that choice. It's a part of life that we have to make choices. So when we don't trust ourselves and we don't make choices, we're still making a choice, but we're not making the choice we choose. We're living reactively to what happens to us. And that's when we can even more start to feel disempowered, feel stuck, feel pain and frustration and resentment, right? So that's why it's so important to be able to make choices, because no matter what happens, we are making a choice. So let's make the best choices we can, right? Because don't, if we don't make a choice, we're still making one, right? There's no, like, it's a part of life, right? Think about what was the first thing that happens to to mankind. They have to make a choice. They have to make a choice. Are they going to listen to God? Are they not going to listen to God? That's what God's saying. That's what life is about. Choices. Here's all the trees to eat from, right? Eat the fruit from all of these trees. Don't eat from that tree. Here's how you have a relationship with me. You have to choose the good and not choose the bad, right? You have to make choices. That's what relationships are about. That's what life is about. Now, even when they made a choice and it wasn't a good choice, let's not forget that they still had an option to correct. right? And they mess that up. And that's okay because all of history then becomes us trying to correct the choice. We're always working to make good choices, right? Last week's Parsha was about making choices. The end of this week's Parsha also is about making choices. The whole Torah talks about what choice are you going to make? That's what life is about. So we can't not make choices. And the way to make good choices is to feel confident with ourselves, to be to be curious about what other possibility exists, what else is possible, and then to make the best choice we can, knowing that it will be imperfect and it's the best we did, right? We'll do our best and it'll be awesome. And if it's not, we can make another choice, right? So I'd love to hear any questions or comments anyone has on this concept, on anything that, he shared, any, like I said, making choices is such a daily part of our lives. And yet we don't always think about it. So sometimes we're just easily making choices and not realizing it, or often we're easily overwhelmed by all the choices that we have. Important to be conscious of how we're making choices so that we can be consciously trusting ourselves, consciously aware of these struggles, and choosing, right? Again, it's a choice, choosing to trust and keep moving forward. So we're empowered and we are making the best choices we can instead of living the life that happens to us. Right? Okay. Self-correction can be very expensive if we make a poor, you mean like a poor choice. So that's definitely true that correcting is something that can be expensive of our time, our money, our whatever it is. I don't know what you specifically mean by expensive here, but it can cost. Let's put it that way. Every choice we make has a cost. That's why I was saying that it's about risk management. Every choice we make is going to have a cost. Whether if we choose A, it's going to have a cost. If we choose B, it's going to have a cost. So all we can do, we can't know which one is the perfect choice. That first of all, there's no perfect choice because then again, there wouldn't be a choice. We don't necessarily know which is going to be the right choice. All we can do is make the best one we can and then choose the next decisions that come up based on that. Now, and remember again that we don't always know just because we have to make another choice, it doesn't mean the first choice we made was wrong, right? It's just the next reality of what we decided, right? So so you're saying here it's paralyzing for me. So what you want to look at when you feel paralyzed, okay, is really really take a moment to ask, really get clear on where specifically am I feeling stuck, right? Feeling paralyzed is feeling stuck. When we feel stuck, we feel like we don't have a choice, right? That's what it means to feel paralyzed. I don't get to choose. I'm stuck in the situation. So, what I invite you to do is that exercise where you pull the choices apart and you look for what else is possible. As much as we often think of our choices as A and B, it's almost always that there are other options, other options that we just haven't let ourselves think of, haven't let ourselves even consider. Okay. And that doesn't mean it's easy. Decisions are not necessarily going to be easy. The choices, like I said, the choices are not necessarily going to be perfect. Perfection does not exist in this world except for God. And so expecting ourselves to make perfect decisions is is so often where we get stuck. Is so often where we get stuck. So both decisions may not be perfect. They're not. And when both options don't feel like good choices, that's where you want to slide them apart and find more choices. And usually, the way you do that, I'll give you a little bit more of how you do that exercise. You look at the two options, and as much as you can, you try to get really curious with them and understand them. What do I like about this choice? What do I not like about this choice? What does this choice mean to me? What does it relate to in my life? What kind of values does it bring up for me? What kind of stories and fears and beliefs do I have around this choice? And do that for each of them. Because the more you understand what each choice means to you, that's how you can then start to find, okay, so what else is possible? Because you, in order to find another option, you have to understand what's going on in your mind, right? What does this issue mean to me? What do these options mean to me? And then you could start to find what actually feels like it works, like it can work, remembering that it doesn't have to be perfect to be a good decision. And always remember that doing nothing is still a choice. So even when both options don't feel good, I really invite you to push yourself to find those third options, find other possibilities so that you don't end up stuck in indecisiveness, which is still an option. It's still a choice. Sorry, it's still a choice. Sometimes it's one of those two choices, sometimes it's a whole other third choice. And those other possibilities become clear when we understand what the other ones mean to us. Okay. And here someone's saying you can also always go back and choose the one you didn't choose. Sometimes, yeah, sometimes you can do that. Sometimes you can't, but sometimes you can, right? Sometimes you can. And it won't always be exactly the same, but you can still do it and it may not be devastating. I remember when my kids were little, my oldest two were little, we put them in a different school. And at first, we were so happy with the school. They went out of the old city. We were so happy with the school. We were happy, we figured out transportation. It was a bit of a struggle. It wasn't a perfect choice because there were challenges involved, but we were happy with it. And then many years later, we suddenly weren't happy. There were things that we weren't so happy about. Now, does that, and we ended up putting them into the school that's right across the street from our house. Now, I could have beaten myself up and said, for 6 years, my kids trekked across town. I trekked across town. All that time and energy and money and oh my gosh. But I didn't do that. I didn't let myself do that because I know that for those years, it was a good choice. And when it wasn't a good choice anymore, we also had to, I had to have the confidence to say, okay, so now I'm choosing something else. Now I'm choosing something else. And it wasn't easy for me to do that. It wasn't easy for me to be able to say, thank you, we're going somewhere else, or admitting that, like, for now it wasn't good for us. I know it wasn't easy for my kids to switch schools. And I knew that now, at this point, it was the best choice. Did I make a mistake? I don't know. Maybe I didn't know enough. Maybe I was an idealistic young mother who thought her kids needed things that they didn't need. Who knows? Maybe it really was the best thing. I choose to believe it was. And then when it wasn't anymore, we made a different choice. So sometimes, yes, we can go back and make the choice that we didn't make, right? But we also will have to deal with the consequences with our own ego sometimes to do that. Also, remember that what we're used to feels good, right? What we're used to has a comfort, even if it sucks because we're used to it. So sometimes we have to be able to get over that and say, you know what? This doesn't work for me. I need something else. Now, you're asking, what do you mean? Think about what each decision means to me in terms of what? Okay. So let's take a decision. I'll just use the same one because I don't want to step on any loaded topics. Let's just take the same decision. Should I switch the kid's school or should I not switch the kid's school? Let's say both of them don't feel like a good option. Okay. Or maybe it's a bigger choice. Should I stay married? Should I not stay married? Should I um, travel for this wedding? Should I not travel for this wedding? Should I move? Should I not move? Should I take this job? Should I not take this job? Well, if both of the options don't sound very good right now, then ask yourself, what why don't they sound good? Like, get curious about what bothers you about each option, and get curious about why each option is even on the table, right? Or what good could come from that option. And just like as if you're having a conversation with some, let's say it was my husband had one, wanted to make one decision and I wanted to make the other. So how would you do that? You'd first say, okay, let's say you have different ideas about whether or not to buy a car or buy a house, or how to deal with a certain chinuch issue, or whether or not to travel, right? So first I'd say, okay, tell me why you want to buy the car, or tell me why you don't want to buy the car. And I'd really try to understand him. Understand, what does a car mean to you? What does money mean to you? Why do you think this is a good choice to make? Why do you not think this is like, let me understand everything about your choice. And then when I feel that I understand him and he feels I understand him, then we can move on to my choice. And I would explain why I think this is a good choice, why I what I don't know about the choice, what the choice means to me, what does money mean to me, what does the car mean to me, right? I talk about the choice. And then once we both understand each other, then we can start to find our synergy. We can start to find those third options. What else is possible? So when you're doing it on your own, you can do that same thing. Try to understand each option, and the more you can understand each option, then you could start to find what will work, what else is possible. Try it. Let me know how it goes. It's a very powerful exercise when done. Yeah? Amazing. Yay. Okay, great questions. So good to be here with all of you. Thank you for coming on today. And I'm excited to see you all next week. And until then, may we all be blessed to live, love, and be loved with all our hearts. Goodbye for now.